Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Wheel of Horror. So I decided since, all COVID-19 stuff is happening and finals week is coming up, that I would record an extra one just so people could have some enjoyment during the week. But basically it's going to work the same as the other episodes, so I'm not going to explain, just watch episode 1 and episode 2. But let's look at some of the movies suggested. We have Hellraiser, House on Haunted Hill, It Follows, Tremors, When a Stranger Calls, Hush, Bad Moon, Lake Mungo, Birdemic, The Woman in Black, The Amityville Horror, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile, The House at the End of Time, and The Wheel of Punishment and Bad Horror. I do not want to get that, and I will cry if I get that. So, let's spin it and see what happens. And we are going to get House on Haunted Hill. So thank you, Nick, for suggesting the movie. And let's get to the review.
I'm Vincent Price, and you're invited to my party in the House on Haunted Hill.
House on Haunted Hill was released in 1959 and was directed by William Castle. It stars Vincent Price and is about a millionaire named Frederick who hosts a dinner party for his wife, and he offers his guests $50,000 if they could stay the entire night. Honestly, I was a little disappointed with the movie. Parts of it don't hold up as well, and I think that's what makes a horror movie great when it was made in like the 60s, 50s, 70s, 80s, because if it can withstand the test of time, that shows that's a great horror movie. I mean, look at Psycho. That movie has withstood the test of time, and honestly, it's still one of the greatest horror movies, and this one unfortunately doesn't hold up as well. Some of the effects aren't as good, they don't hold up. Some of the camera work is a little shoddy, some of the acting sometimes isn't the best.
Bodies.
But I did enjoy it though, even though it was a little disappointing. The first thing I do want to talk about is some of the camera work. Now, most of it is pretty good, but sometimes there's very weird shots that they show you that don't really make sense, or you could see like a poorly edited thing happening, and I'm trying not to spoil some of the things, so that's why I'm going to use like non-descriptive words like thing or something. But yeah, sometimes it is a little shoddy, but overall the camera work is pretty good, and for the time it was pretty good. The best part of the movie is definitely the star, Vincent Price. He does such a phenomenal job with his role, and there's a lot of depth to his character, which is surprising because he's a really like malicious and horrible guy. I mean, you find out that he has had 4 wives, with 3 of them dead, and he's always threatening to kill this new wife that he has, but she always says how she's gonna kill him. So there's a weird dynamic between them where at one point he says how she tried to poison him, but like he really hasn't tried to kill her yet, although it's kind of guessed that he might be.
You ready, dear?
No.
Are you ready, dear?
Yes, damn you.
Which, I can't go into much more spoilers than that, but something happens to where a murder mystery ensues, and the ending is pretty unexpected. I don't want to say it's completely unexpected because it could be guessed what happens, but there's a few good plot twists that happen throughout the movie, and honestly, these plot twists add a lot of tension between characters because they don't know who to trust anymore, or where anyone is. I mean, it becomes a lot of people running around this house, which I do want to talk about the house. And I'm going to stop what I was saying to talk about it because this kind of bugged me throughout the entire movie. But this is the weirdest looking house I have ever seen in my life. I mean, they show so many shots from the outside of this house, and it looks like a bunch of different shapes were chosen for this house, where they were like, okay, let's get a triangle right here, we'll make a circle right here, but let's make a rectangle and a pentagon somewhere. It's such a weird layout to this house, and it bugged me the entire movie because I was like, this doesn't look like a normal house, but on the inside it does. With, there's like cobwebs because it's like an older house and ooh, aesthetic, but Yeah, the outside of the house very much so bugged me. Going back to Vincent Taylor, though, I mean, he does a great job with what he's given, and even the other actors and actresses do a great job. I don't really know their names, I kind of just know their character names. My favorite character of the movie was Lance. He's a test pilot. I don't know why, I just really liked him. He was a good actor, he did a good job, I was proud of his performance. There's a newspaper lady who she probably has the worst performance in the movie, and saying worst doesn't mean that she was like this terrible character who didn't know how to act. She just was really boring. There was no real arc to her character. It feels like she's just in the movie to be another actress or another body to the movie. I don't want to go into more details than that, but yeah, there's not a lot for her character to do. And it's kind of a shame because it really feels like she's the only character who doesn't get any sort of development. It's just kind of weird things that happen to her that aren't explained at the end of the movie. Which I do like sometimes when things are left to our imagination. But with the ending how it is, that no longer makes sense throughout the movie. One thing I love about older movies is the scores to them. I mean, I love the score to this movie. It was so in your face and so blaring all the tropes that they were trying to do with like little piano arpeggios and all that kind of stuff to like signify different things, or like if a scare would happen, like a trombone would just blare. And honestly, I love that. It's just one of those like classic horror movie tropes that they were showing. But now that we spoke about some positives and a few negatives already, let's speak about some more negatives, which unfortunately I have a big problem with the plot of the movie. So there are quite a few plot holes throughout the movie, which unfortunately this is a spoiler-free review, so I can't spoil anything, but you'll kind of see it if you watch the movie. There's a few things that happen that don't really make sense, and they're kind of asking you to accept it, but it's hard to accept it when it asks you way too many times to. And there's one specific part where there's a jump scare, where this woman says this thing was floating, but later on you find out something which no longer makes sense to how that thing would be floating. And there's like a few more plot holes throughout the movie that are kind of unexplained, or they ask you to just to accept it, which it got to a point where it became too much, and I was starting to be like, no, I can't accept that, no. And I think people know I mean with stuff like that. I'm trying to think of a movie where there's where they ask you to accept too many things. Probably like a Fantasy Island, although that's a terrible movie and a bad example, because I would much rather watch this movie than Fantasy Island. Or Bye Bye Man. I always bring up the Bye Bye Man, but honestly, it's such a great movie to talk about terrible things that happen. It asked you to accept way too many things in that movie, and you just cannot. I mean, they do it so much by the middle of the movie, you just check out. And I already know that I'm talking so much crap about the Bye Bye Man that I'm going to have to review it one day. But I'm going to wait as long as I can before I have to review that stupid movie. Because, oh boy, honestly, I might have to wait until I can drink a little bit to talk about it, because I can't do it sober. Another one of the negatives that I have with this movie is budget related. So the movie was made for a budget of $200,000, which was probably a lot more money back then than it is now. But honestly, there's so much to it where you could see they needed a lot more money. There's a few scares that they try to have that look awful, and awful for the standards of 59 as well. Because, I mean, you could look at Psycho, and a lot of it you could still watch today, and it's still horrifying and very well made. But for some of this, it's not as well made, and I think that's budget related. I don't think that's director related, because I think William Castle is a pretty good director. But I think definitely there was a lot of budget issues and restraints with this movie. And I don't want to say it takes away, but it bugs you a little bit throughout the movie. Just like, oh, I wish they had like at least $100,000 more to fix that, you know? But overall, this is a pretty good movie. A little disappointing for the standard of 59, and even for when I was watching it, I was a little disappointed. But the person who recommended it, Nick, he has a very good taste in horror movies. So, Nick, you've never let me down. I won't say you let me down with this one, but you better not make me watch something like this again with a terrible budget. I'm just playing with you, Nick. I love you. Overall, I think I'd give this movie a 6 out of 10. And you know, I would recommend it for people to watch. I mean, if you want to watch an older style horror film, then by all means, it has all the good old horror tropes and cliches that you have in the 50s and 60s for horror films. And honestly, it's on Amazon Prime for free. And yeah, I would watch it. There's 2 different versions on there. There's the colorized version, and there's the black and white. I decided to watch the black and white for the aesthetic of it, but for people who might get a little bit too annoyed with watching it black and white or can't do that, then, you know, there's the colorized version. I don't know if it takes away, if it makes it better or not, because I haven't seen it, but I would recommend you to watch this movie. So thank you for watching this review, and thank you, Nick, again, for recommending the movie. And let's flash forward to the next review.